Okay, we're about to get a really fun part of the day, but before we do, friendly reminder, hashtag TCDisrupt is where you're chatting with us. If you want to yell at me directly, it's at Jordan R. Crook. Don't forget the R. I also want to make a quick announcement. I have a friend here named Daniel. He's wearing a blue and white striped shirt. If you guys see him, he's British, and he asked me to give him a shout out, so he won't tell me his last name though. Now he's worried about me embarrassing him. Anyways, hopefully you've forgotten that TechCrunch is owned by AOL. We try to quite a bit. But today's gonna be a good day with parent company AOL. We're bringing out the CEO of the company, Tim Armstrong, and he's gonna be talking to Josh Constine. Warm welcome, please.
Okay.
Getting dialed in?
Yeah, Tim, I gotta ask, is that still the sound of AOL?
Well, first of all, I have to ask a more important question. Do you have your own clothes on this for this?
I do. See, we did an interview 2 years ago. I called him my dark overlord because he owns my boss's company. But I wasn't even wearing my own clothes, so it was a little bit like an uneven playing field. But this time I got my own clothes on.
Your own duds on?
Yeah, you're not going to get it so easy this time.
All right, let's go.
All right, so seriously, is dial-up still like a big part of AOL's business, and what are we doing to get past that?
Yeah, so one is, I think, dial-up is where the company started, and that's really what transformed AOL to be a global company. And today, like in the UK, actually, there's a fair amount of customers on AOL dial-up with our partnership with TalkTalk. But what's important is that those people are, first of all, there's about 11 million people who use dial-up in the United States still overall. So, we have about 2 million of those people. But the most important thing is those people are hugely loyal to AOL. So when we talk about getting beyond the dial-up business or those things in general, that's one customer who's loyal to AOL, and those are customers that we want to keep forever. So I would look at them more as customers of the brand rather than dial-up overall. So after selling the internet, AOL really became an ad company, but in the modern age, Google and Facebook are piling up all of this ad targeting data. I want to know, what is AOL doing to get the data it needs to be a serious competitor in the mobile advertising market? Yeah, so there's two things. One, I would say, we're also large in content. We're the #1 distributed global news source with Huffington Post in the US, and I think TechCrunch, if you see there's 1,800 people here in general, I'd say we're pretty big in content also. And on the advertising side, I think advertising is getting bifurcated into two different arenas. One is programmatic, which is automation and data. The other side is doing very, very rich, robust custom deals. And I've said this before publicly, I think everything in the middle of advertising is going to die. You're either going to have to be great at programmatic and great at data scale, or great at custom. On the data scale side of things, we have probably the longest machine learning algorithms and data scale in terms of display targeting. We bought the #1 video marketplace, Adapt TV, last year overall. So the AOL core users, we have about 250 million consumers a month. We also have all the data targeting that we do with partners. We have about 40,000 websites that we put partnerships on. So AOL's pretty robust in the data field overall. I think Facebook and Google are big in the data field also. Our plan in 2015 is to get bigger into the data field overall, and I think that will become a combination of things we do ourselves as well as more partnerships with other people. But is that more like personalized data, like personalization and personal info, biographical data, or is it more kind of cookies, retargeting stuff, the data that will help us know where people have been and what they want to see next? No, I think if you look out in the future, not necessarily right now, but you look out 3-4 years from now, I think the cookie targeting business is not going to be the mainstay business. I think it really will be about understanding your audience from an audience standpoint and from registration data and those type of things. And one of the things that we're doing behind the scenes, which you probably don't see even inside the company, is putting together a registration system that is universal. Even though we have different brands at the top, there will be shared universal data around targeting for advertising and registration.
But most people don't have to register to go to our content websites.
They should.
The ads.
They should.
They should?
They should.
I don't know if I want people to have to give their email address to sign up to read TechCrunch. That seems like a huge barrier you're going to erect.
Right. Well, I think from a barrier standpoint, if we have really valuable content that they want, like if you look at something like TechCrunch Cribs, for instance, which I love watching those programs and seeing the inside of other companies, that might be something that somebody's willing to register for. So I think we'll have free content you don't have to register for, but my hope is brands like TechCrunch will have more and more premium content over time that people want to have a relationship with.
So one way to potentially improve the targeting data that AOL has would be to acquire or merge with or be acquired by another big ad company like Yahoo. Now, I know you and Marissa Meyer are friends, you guys know each other. Have you guys had any explicit talks about that kind of deal?
No. And I would say just overall, I've said this publicly not very many times, but I'm going back to our board meeting in New York tonight. I got here this morning, I'm flying back tonight, I'm giving a 30, 40-page deck to the board about 2015 when I get back, and I don't think Yahoo's mentioned once in that deck. So I think our plans as a company are really to basically be a standalone company and to continue to grow our current properties. And I think second of all is be opportunistic about partnerships and M&A stuff overall. So I think there's a lot of noise around that situation, but AOL has a clear strategy, clear growth. We've grown for 6 quarters in a row. I think Yahoo has a situation with Starboard that's unrelated to AOL, and I'd leave it at that.
Are any of your lieutenants sort of bringing the voice to the table that they want you and Yahoo to get together?
No, I think there is a definitive voice that we want to transform the company to be a bigger company next year, and I think that's going to come with a lot of work that's getting done in the next 2 months. But I think our strategy for next year, if I fast forward, is going to be to go down to global content brands and really make them expand quickly, like a TechCrunch or Huffington Post, to go into video space more aggressively, which we've been doing already, and then to scale programmatic advertising. And I think those 3 areas are things that we'll probably put the gas pedal down on, subject to change from going through all our planning cycles. But I think every single executive I know at the company wants to aggressively transform ourselves rather than doing something else.
Is there anything that AOL loses out on by not doing a big deal like that?
I mean, if you believe our strategy is correct, and we've taken the worst merger in history and turned it around to growth, if you put that on top of other traffic that's large traffic, and you think that strategy would work in other traffic, it would behoove you to do a deal. If you don't believe that, you wouldn't do it. But I think our focus has been just growing our own products and services and then doing smart deals with other companies. I would say the TechCrunch deal is a very, very smart deal for us to have done and has a huge opportunity for next year. And I think there's 5 or 6 things at the company that kind of feel that way.
Let's back up for a second. So you called the AOL merger with Time Warner the worst merger in history?
One of them.
One of them? Okay.
Well, it is, I mean, statistically.
Okay, so inside of AOL, it kind of seems like the properties are warring fiefdoms. They're not really well synergized, to use a buzzword. There's all these different news sites, but they're not really cross-promoting each other. Huffington Post isn't doing a lot to help grow the Engadget audience. And I wanted to know, what are concrete ways that you're trying to incentivize more cooperation between AOL's content properties? So
one is when we acquired people's companies, whether it's TechCrunch or whether it was Huffington Post or whether it was Adapt, I sit down with the entrepreneurs and what I say is, we're going to bring, steel and money, infrastructure and ability to scale. And we're investing in your vision. So if you're the CEO right now of a company we're looking at acquiring, I would sit down and say to you, it's a nice jacket, by the way, the fact that it's yours makes it even better.
Yeah, we're getting cozy up here.
We really want TechCrunch to scale because I think people are here because of the TechCrunch brand overall. Under the surface, I think there's 6 or 7 things that we're doing inside the company to thread the silos together. One of them I mentioned was registration, other things. In 2015, you'll see us take a more channelized approach where TechCrunch will be its own brand, just like it is today, but we will weave TechCrunch content into more places across the AOL network, and we'll most likely do more video content, which will run across AOL On and stuff. So I believe that we acquired visions and have put resources behind them, and we can do a better job pulling down some of the silos, but my guess is people are here for TechCrunch. and that's why I'm here also.
Well, two of the products that do feel like they work well together are TechCrunch and Crunchbase. Do you have any interest, or are you trying actively to spin out Crunchbase?
So we have been actively thinking about how to scale Crunchbase the best. And there's a theory on Crunchbase that it fits inside of TechCrunch and can be a nice property underneath, kind of a structured data property underneath the content property. The second one is that we should either put money in ourselves or raise money from outside people to really scale, TechCrunch, Crunchbase up. And I've been open to both all three avenues, frankly. And my biggest focus on Crunchbase is that Crunchbase continues to get better and bigger data overall, and that I think Crunchbase could be a very, very large company on its own. So I want to put investment into it, and I'm spending time with Matt and Ned, and I have many meetings with them about it. So I'd say I'm open to throw the ball or kick the ball. I guess we're in London, kick the ball to the open player in terms of which way we go on this. So I'd be happy to fund it ourselves, or happy to fund it if we have great partners who are going to make it grow faster.
How would an independent Crunchbase work?
I don't think, first of all, I don't think it would be independent, because I think Crunchbase is very tied into TechCrunch. And I think TechCrunch, if you go here, most of the companies here are probably already listed or love to be listed on Crunchbase.
Does that mean you're going to spin us out too?
Spin you out?
Yeah.
You want me to spin you out personally? I don't.
Yeah, and back in the parking lot after the show?
Yeah, you have to do the Battlefield. You have something to present at Battlefield today?
No, but TechCrunch,
right.
seriously, are you going to spin it
No,
out as well?
we love TechCrunch. And I think TechCrunch, even if we did something with Crunchbase, AOL would be the majority owner of it. I think tech is a mega trend in the world. I visit lots of large companies all over the world. I was in Europe 2 weeks ago meeting with companies. Tech is a mega trend that's not going away, and we're not divesting out of tech for sure.
So a few years ago when we talked, it was really soon after AOL had acquired TechCrunch, and that sort of led to an exodus of some of the writers and editors and talent. What would you say you've learned from that experience in how to acquire companies without losing their talent?
Well, I think one is TechCrunch has exceptional talent still and has done very well. I think we've had record attendance, so the company's done well. I think on the talent front, we tried to integrate things really quickly after we acquired the Huffington Post and TechCrunch, and I think that was probably a lesson of going back to the vision part of making sure that everyone's vision has a space to grow and live. And I think that from our standpoint, for the other companies that we've acquired, I think we've learned a lot, over the years, and I've gotten better at partnering with companies. I think we're one of the best places in the industry to go bring your company to if you're interested in growing.
So you think that you guys crammed TechCrunch and Huffington Post in a little too quickly?
I think we spent a lot of time we got to remember, we were in the very thick of a very major turnaround at that point, and I think we were moving at lightning speed. And I think looking back on it now, would we have a different outcome today? I don't know. TechCrunch has done very well, but I think we learned a lot during that about staying really focused.
Well, a little more specifically, what did you learn from firing Michael Arrington?
Mike, well, first of all, as you know, Mike has an open job offer to come back anytime he wants.
That's like an open job offer to take Alexia's job, right?
No.
That's like, Mike kind of a mean thing for you to say.
That's Mike coming back to be like a chairman role at TechCrunch. And when Mike was leaving, by the way, he wanted to do his fund, and I think Mike is somebody I keep in touch with on a fairly regular basis, and Mike knows how I feel about him, and he knows how I feel about him eventually coming back to do stuff with us. We're the largest investor in Crunchbase, and Crunch Fund. So we're big supporters of Mike Arrington.
So was that something where you just didn't brief everyone, or probably get everyone on board at AOL, on board with that decision before it happened, and that's where Ariana sort of stepped aside and said she didn't want that to happen?
I think at that, which was well documented at the time period, I think there was. TechCrunch is a very specific property that does things in a very specific way and has a real holistic nature, I think, in the startup community. And the startup community is not the same as every other property, we have. And, I grew up in Silicon Valley and in Seattle and New York working at internet companies for the last 20 years. And, people don't, if you come from other industries and come into the tech world, you don't realize how much people work together. Like in the early days when I was at Google, it would not be unusual to have what today are big competitors of Google's in management meetings with us and giving us advice. And I think that the tech landscape has a different ethos around things. And as long as TechCrunch stays true to the content and people trust it and believe it, But I think at the time period, there was probably two different viewpoints on it.
So sometimes when there's companies that are really unique, you can't just go in and change parts of them and assume the rest of them will stay the same. You can't paint in a black swan white.
Right. Yeah, I think also, you know, for entrepreneurs, the reason entrepreneurs are great is because they typically, I call them gap recognizers. They can see a gap in the marketplace and they go after it. I think TechCrunch fills a very specific gap, you know, in the information marketplace. And so I think it's a mistake to not let entrepreneurs, you know, really go after the gaps they see in the marketplace, and that's probably a lesson, you know, in our history, which is a good lesson to have, and has made us a better company.
Every executive has their faux pas moments. You know, Satya Nadella from Microsoft just said that women should rely on karma for getting the raises that they deserve, which is a pretty deplorable thing to say. You had some of your own gaffes between talking about distressed babies, running up the healthcare costs for AOL, and, you know, firing someone in the middle of a conference call. Did those things leave a permanent dent, or how have you learned to repair them and move forward?
Yeah, I think in a situation in today's business world in general, first of all, I'm a direct, open communicator about things overall. Both those situations were about very detailed things that we were doing as a business. And so I think most people inside the company at AOL, I believe, know the intentions of those situations, and could I have handled them better? 100%. I think in today, as a CEO of a company, you're in an always-on landscape, and you know, the bottom line is, I think you have to learn and grow from those events, and I think you have to take what you could have done better and move on, and I think you have to take what should have been prepared differently inside the company around those events also. So I think there was a lot of learning. I'm sure Satya has a lot of learnings, you know, from that event, and it will make him a better CEO.
Did you go home after either one of those events and just sort of have like a oof, like moment in your office alone, or how did you feel afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in the job responsibility category I have, you know, the first thing is to make sure that as a company and a talent base that we really respect everybody that we work with overall. And in both of those cases, for different reasons, I was trying to explain two very difficult situations, and I think I probably could have done a better job of them. Also, I think being self-reflective, and I'm fairly self-reflective, I think I looked at those situations and I've made changes in sort of how I operate and what I do, you know, to kind of change that overall.
What are those changes?
I mean, part of it is, I think, in certain situations in those cases, we had policies or things that we were doing that weren't followed overall, and I reacted to them real time. And I think one thing on a leadership lesson side is, it's easy for a leader to jump in and try to take care of situations or explain situations, but if you're not properly prepared, or you're not properly with a set of information that the company should have, you know, I think that's one thing. I think the second thing actually is, you know, when you really take a step back, every CEO, a lot of the CEOs I have dealt with, and I talk to them a lot after, one of the things I did is talk to other CEOs after that situation. Most CEOs have had those type of experiences, whether they've been public, things are more public now because of the technology, have had those situations. And I think it's whether or not you learn from them or don't learn from them, and I've tried to learn from them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very different world now with Twitter and the real-time news, that every word you say, if you're an executive, is immediately put on blast. And so if you do anything wrong, it becomes very public very quickly. Yeah. So I looked at the AOL leadership page, and I'll say I was impressed that, you know, we have a bunch of executive vice presidents and our CFO who are women. But, you know, I wanted to just give you a chance to ask, you know, how do you think women in the corporate world can get the power or pay that they rightfully have earned? Yeah,
I think before I get to that and I'll answer that is, you know, one of the things we've had actually at AOL is a focus, I think actually women building products and women leading in the internet space, because after spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and I saw basically a gap in terms of how many women were in leadership positions overall. So at our company, we have, you know, a very high percentage of females on our board and in the leadership team overall, and I think that's been a huge benefit for us as a company. I think outside of whether it's a gender issue or diversity issue, it's actually a very smart business strategy and brings a different viewpoint to a lot of things that we do overall. But, you know, I think the bottom line is actually most people I know, regardless of any diversity category, what they really want is an opportunity to actually learn and grow. And I think from a payment standpoint and those things, I think giving people the ability to use all of their talent typically leads to the best payment and giving them the most responsibility. And I'm flying back for our board meeting. We also have a makers event. We have this site called makers.com. I'd suggest you go to it if you're interested in women's leadership, which we funded 3 or 4 years ago in partnership with Gloria Steinem and a bunch of other people. It's on PBS in the United States as a documentary. And in that, we have 2,700 stories right now of women's leaders. All of those stories have what I would call a moment in them where there's a real opportunity to take on a leadership role or to do things. And I think whether you're male, female, whatever diversity categories, is to really make sure the company is set up to allow people to excel. And number 2 is that people are encouraged to take risks overall. And I think that risk comes, and I'm also leading, with the Internet Advertising Bureau in the United States. I'm chairman of the diversity panel, which they just started, and I'm going out to do town halls across the U.S. about it. I think it's a huge opportunity. I think everyone should get paid fairly for the talent. Everyone in the world wants to get paid fairly for what they bring to the table, and I think that is it's a big opportunity, and there's gaps in that right now.
Well, it's nice to see that there's something that AOL can be a role model in. I know that there's a big lack of gender and racial diversity in a lot of startups out there, and I agree with you. It really is bad product sense. If you're starting a dating startup and you're all guys, how are you possibly going to know what your audience wants? And so it's great to see that you guys are taking that into account when you're trying to make a global brand with really wide appeal, that you're trying to bring as many people and voices and perspectives to the table as possible.
Yeah, I was just in New York last few weeks in a meeting with a couple different companies, both of them run by women entrepreneurs, and I think from a standpoint of what they bring to the table, there's a differentiation, and I think that you win in business by being differentiated. Period. Full stop. You're not going to be successful if you do what everybody else does, and that's a really, really significant opportunity on the diversity front. All types of diversity, by the way.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for that.
Right.
Great. It was great talking with you, Tim.
Great. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.